When Israel occupied the west bank of the River Jordan, we are talking about territory of 5,500 square kilometers. They ended up with nearly 70% of the Palestinian population in the West Bank and in Gaza refusing to escape. So people stayed. So you want the land. So the dilemma the Israelis dealt with ended up being resolved by misinterpretation of the conventions that restrict or design the behavior of an occupying power. And the convention I'm talking about is the Fourth Geneva Convention. So the Fourth Geneva Convention clearly calls on the occupying power to continue to uphold existing civil rules and regulations. Let's say Malaysia will occupy Thailand. You're allowed to occupy, but you're not allowed to apply Malaysian rules and regulations on the people of Thailand. When the United States occupied Iraq, they did not subject Iraqi to American civil law. They maintained Iraqi civil law. So the occupying power have to continue to uphold existing civil rules and regulations. So the Israelis were like, land issues are civil issues. So we are going to apply existing land laws. We don't need to bring in Israeli laws because we can use any of the past laws to steal land. The objective is to rob Palestinian families of their land. That's the objective. So here's the creative thing that Israelis did, was like they decided that every regime that existed in Palestine that had a land law, that land law will be applicable. You know who controlled the West Bank before the State of Israel? Who called the West Bank the West Bank? Jordanian Kingdom. Because the Jordanians ruled that area for 18 years, from 1949 until 1967. So Jordanian land laws are applicable. Who controlled the West Bank before the Jordanians? The British. British land laws are applicable. Who controlled Palestine before the British? The Ottomans. So Ottoman land laws are applicable. Who was there before the Ottomans? The Mamluks, Salah ad-Din, that era. But they did not have a documented land law. But if they did, the Israelis would still apply that law, okay? I'll show you how the State of Israel steals land based on their use of those laws. We start with the British. The British gave themselves the power to seize land temporarily, not permanently, temporarily for security purposes. One of the obvious examples of that is the Israeli security fence, a structure that is nearly 730 kilometers long, which is the black line on this map. The boundaries between the occupied West Bank and the rest of Palestine is 360 kilometers long. The Israeli wall is about 730 kilometers long. Why? Because it can go sometimes as deep as 20 kilometers inside the occupied West Bank, leaving land on one side and owners of land on the other side. The Israelis decided to confiscate the land on which this structure is installed, which is, believe it or not, it's nearly 3% of the property of the residents of the West Bank. They decided to confiscate the land on which the structure is physically built for security purposes. So they just decide that we want this property. They don't care about who owns it. They don't care about who maintains it. They don't care about any Palestinian. In this case, they was look, it's for security reasons. If you say, but what security does it serve? I don't feel safe as a landowner. I was no, it's not your security. It's the security of the state, because the state needs security to steal your land. If the State of Israel doesn't feel safe stealing your land, it will not steal your land. They need that kind of safety and security. So the Israeli wall was resulted on the destruction of acres upon acres of property owned by Palestinian families. And it just doesn't make sense because Palestinians live on both sides of this structure. So if the danger is Palestinian, then you have Palestinians on both sides. Well, it's not for the Palestinians, for the Jews. You have Jewish Israelis living also on both sides. On this side of the wall, we have nearly 400,000 or 500,000 Israeli settlers. What kind of security we're talking about? The only security I found out is that provides the State of Israel with safety and security, stealing Palestinian land and dividing Palestinians from Palestinians and dividing Palestinians from their land. Now, this is only relevant to 3% of the property of Palestinian residents. 30% of the property of Palestinian residents of the West Bank is declared closed military zones, which is land confiscated for security reasons. There's an Israeli report that shows that Israeli security forces use that land for 1 day every 3 months on average, 4 days a year. Point is not like the Israelis confiscate your land because they need security for 4 days a year. The reason is to make sure that you and your family have no access to your property for every single day of the year. I said the British passed that law where they could seize land temporarily, but the state of Israel seizes land permanently in practice, but on paper it's temporary. The actual official translation of the Israeli wall is a temporary security barrier. Temporary, it's not permanent. We know that land confiscation goes on from an Israeli point of view permanently, but they are willing to use whatever law and whatever interpretation that enables them to rob Palestinian families of their land. So that's how they use the British law.